The views and content expressed on the Pop Culture Courtroom are provided solely for educational and entertainment purposes and do not constitute legal advice. For any legal matters, please consult with a licensed attorney.
Welcome back to the Pop Culture Courtroom. I'm Matt Hardin, and today we have a very special guest with us. We have my daughter, Grace. So welcome, Grace.
Hello.
I thought we would do something a little different for one of our episodes today. So one of my daughters, both Grace and her younger sister, Vivian, love a Australian show called Bluey. Do you like Bluey, Grace?
Sure.
What do you like about it?
Dad.
You like Bandit? What do you like about Bandit?
No, he just makes the show less boring.
He's probably my favorite character on the show, which we'll talk about later on. So essentially, the show is about this family of blue heeler dogs. You have Bandit, and who else is in the family?
Chili, Bingo, and obviously Bluey.
Yeah. So Bingo and Bluey are the children of the heeler family. Mom, Chili, works at the airport in security, and I think Dad is an archaeologist. Today's episode, we're going to do two. They're very short. All the Bluey episodes are like 7 to 9 minutes, with the exception of maybe the one.
There's one special episode that was like half an hour long.
That's right. And the most recent, where they thought about moving from Brisbane.
Australia.
Well, the city's called Brisbane. It's in Australia.
Is that a real city?
It is a real city.
Mm-hmm.
It is. We are going to talk first about the episode Hospital. What is the setup of the episode? What's happening in this one?
Okay, so they start playing this weird game where Dad is like doing random, like throwing them everywhere. And he says, "Can we play a game where I get to lay down on the couch?"
That's a game every parent would like to play more.
Oh, yeah, definitely. We can tell. Then they squeal like, "Hospital!" And then Dad's like, as always, he's like, "Oh, not hospital."
But he does it because he's a very supportive parent in this show.
Oh, yeah, he plays a lot of games with them.
So in this episode, they're going to play hospital. He goes in and lays down on a couple of the couch cushions. And what roles are Bluey and Bingo playing?
Bingo's playing like the kind nurse, and honestly, Bluey's playing like the obnoxious doctor.
And Bandit plays a character. Do you remember what his name is?
Tiberius.
It's Telemachus.
Telemachus.
Having gone to a liberal arts college and studied some Greek mythology on the way, I actually know what this character comes from. Do you ever done any mythology in your school? What do you know about that? What do you know about what mythology is?
It's like Greek stuff with like the gods.
That's right. So Telemachus is actually a character in Homer's The Odyssey. He's the son of the main character Odysseus and his wife Penelope. In the Odyssey, you have Odysseus, who's gone off to fight the Trojan War for essentially 20 years or so. And Telemachus is actually a Greek word meaning far from war. But
he's in war.
He's in war with his children in this one, essentially, is what Bandit is. But his story within it is essentially he goes to look for his father after he's been away from him for over 20 years fighting. And it's essentially a coming-of-age story, exactly like Bluey is. And it's pretty fun that whoever wrote this episode came up with that. So what is Telemachus in the hospital for?
They take x-rays, and apparently he has a cat in his stomach. And when they go to take it out, they find an octopus, and they just shove it back in his stomach, thinking it's like meant to be there.
I got the sense the octopus is supposed to be like his intestines or something, and they shouldn't have taken him out. And is Bluey gentle in her bed manner with the patient?
No, she's like yanking stuff out and like pulling it. So who knows? Maybe she could have like ripped it off of something.
So before Bluey does surgery, does she give any care to him before she knows what's going on?
No, she just goes for it. And that's what I am also thinking about is she didn't wash her hands and she wasn't wearing gloves, and she just went in there with like a little like wooden whisk thing, and she just opened his stomach.
Well, I thought what's amusing is she comes in immediately, does not ask the patient what's going on, and gives him a shot.
Yes, and then the Bingo, the nurse, comes over and she just plops a Band-Aid on it.
That's right. The only diagnosis we really get out of this, and I believe he's had 2 shots before the surgery and then gets another shot during surgery and then another shot later on. Do you think it's okay for a doctor to start giving treatment without knowing what's going on with the patient?
No, she gave him the shot, and then she asked, "What's wrong with you?" And he says, well, normally doctors ask that before they start giving shots. And then he's like, well, my stomach has been feeling really weird.
So it's a bit strange that she goes ahead and gives him treatment before knowing what is going on. And so, we do some medical malpractice cases in our practice here in Tennessee, and that's also a cause of action in other states. And what it typically is going to look at is what is the standard of care. What the standard of care means from a legal standpoint is what would a reasonable medical provider, a doctor or nurse, done under that set of circumstances at a particular time and place. And so is that what would have happened in this place? So in this case, would you have expected a doctor to just come and start offering treatment without even talking to the patient about what's going on?
No, and also the other thing is that normally they don't do the surgeries. From what I've seen, people don't do the surgeries in the same bed. They take them to a different part of the hospital to do it.
I think that's right. I think it depends on how sick the patient is. There is times certainly when they have to give a surgery right then because of the condition of the patient. So when Bluey goes into surgery with Telemachus, do you remember whether or not she's about to start the surgery with or without giving anesthesia?
Oh, yeah. She just went on and threw a magazine at him and was like, okay, you could start reading. And then he's like, aren't you gonna make me fall asleep? And then Bingo comes up and she starts singing go to sleep. I know Bluey's 7 years old, but I think she would know that you can't give a surgery while they're wide awake.
Probably depends on what kind of shows they've been watching. If the days before anesthesia, in the 1800s, I remember watching, Old West type of movies where they would give somebody that had to get a leg removed or something. They give them a piece of leather to bite on instead of that, or a shot of whiskey, something
But wouldn't
like that.
they cover their mouth with a napkin to make them faint?
That happens, but it's more the anesthesia is given by another type of doctor or that's trained in putting people under for surgery and keeping them alive during the surgery. It's a really important thing to do because there's a lot of procedures, including doing surgery on a abdomen or a stomach, where you don't want to be awake for that generally.
I read this book from the library, and it was how they used to do surgeries back in the 1800s, and they used to if you had a broken bone, they would just cut off that limb. And for surgeries, after a surgery, you had an incredibly slim chance to survive.
A lot of it, they didn't know as much back then about infection that you can get during surgery. Like you talked about the issue where Bluey's never shown scrubbing her hands to disinfect them or wearing any gloves. Here, she pulls out with her bare hands what appears to be the intestines of this patient.
An octopus with eyeballs.
Right. Not a bad depiction of intestines with what they had to do with their imaginations there. But bare hands, and we have bacteria and germs on our hands all the time. That's why we want you washing the hands after you use restroom or, after you get something on there you don't want on there. But Bluey just goes in. So the odds of Telemachus having a post-operative infection here, probably pretty high.
Yeah, and knowing kids at that age, they don't really wash their hands that much.
So you have a 6-year-old sister. Do you think her hands are clean right now?
Oh, never. I watch her do it.
Yeah, we strongly encourage her to do so, but that's just part of growing up. Now, what's interesting to me here is they do this first surgery. Bluey essentially, after shoving the octopus intestines back in, does she just give up on this patient? What happens?
She totally gives up on him and is like, well, that cat's not coming out of there.
Okay. And so she had, her opinion was the cat had snuck in through Telemachus's belly button while he was sleeping. Yes. So who advocates for Telemachus to get some more treatment?
Bingo, Nurse Bingo. She doesn't want to leave anyone hurt. And then she redoes the x-ray. And when it comes out, there's a mouse in it. But Telemachus is having a very hard time knowing, like, identifying his animals.
So he has both a mouse and a cat in there. She goes out and gets Dr. Bluey to come in and take another look at the X-ray, and then what happens?
And then she's like, oh my goodness! And then they go back to surgery, and their idea was that the cat chased the mouse into his stomach. So he ate a mouse, but the cat followed in. So at the end, they lured them with cheese.
So essentially takes cheese, holds it over Telemachus's mouth, and the mouse comes running out of his belly, and the cat chases the mouse. So is that second surgery a success?
Yes, but I never knew that with medical stuff, people actually use cheese.
I think they've taken some artistic license here. I think Dr. Bluey did what was necessary for this particular patient.
Oh, yeah.
But the part that I thought was really interesting, and I think this is true in real life, the doctors are seeing patients all over a hospital, over their practices, especially after surgery. The nurses are going to be their eyes and ears, and it's so important for them to advocate for patients and let the doctor know what's going on in a particular patient. And in this case, in the Bluey world, does it appear that Nurse Bingo has saved Telemachus's life?
Yes, I'm not sure how Bluey made it through medical school with good grades.
I think she definitely needs to work on her patient relationships, her patient-doctor relationships. And
She's just kind of lazy with it, honestly.
and learning. So as far as a court case here, we don't really know what happens with Telemachus and whether he ends up with a post-operative infection or not. This is a happy, nice show, so we were hopeful that this surgery turns out well, and Nurse Bingo and Bluey have saved the day here.
Yes.
We talked about the standard of care a little bit. So the standard of care, if you have a medical provider that's not done what they should have done at a particular time and place, like a typical provider would have done, there has to be some type of damages. That means that there has to be a injury to the patient or something to where they were not as well off as they should have been, or if maybe they had died when they shouldn't have. You'd have to look at that. So while there certainly was what appeared to be negligent treatment given by Dr. Bluey in this imaginary situation, we don't see where there's any damages or anything that's happened that's left Telemachus in a worse spot than he was. And in fact, Dr. Bluey and her nurse got the cat and the mouse out of here and lived to fight another day. Probably not a case in this part. They save the day and their playtime ends, and I don't know that Bluey got a lot of rest, or not Bluey. I don't know that that Bandit got a lot of rest here, but ultimately it ends up post-surgery. Bluey gives him one last shot.
And we don't know how long that cat was in his stomach. They didn't ask him how long his stomach had been hurting. They just went in and did the surgery.
And the cat and the mouse are still alive, so they turn out all right too. So
yeah, even with all that stomach acid and stuff like that.
They saved 3 lives in this surgery, so job well done.
Yeah.
All right, so the second episode that we are going to do is an episode called Driving. So who is part of this episode?
This episode, there is no Bingo, no Dad. This episode is Bluey and their mom. Bingo and Dad are in the beginning, but they leave to go do something.
So I think Mom takes a work call from the airport where she does security. Is it Madge she's talking
Madge,
to? Yeah. And Bluey is wanting her to play a game called Driving. Mom tells Madge that she'll call her back in 5 minutes, and they proceed out to teach Bluey how to drive. Is that what's going on?
Yes.
Essentially, they start off and Bluey's driving just aimlessly. They put on their seatbelts and they are driving an imaginary car.
Yeah, and when I was listening to the phone call, I think Madge was like whining about someone stealing her stapler. And then like Mom was telling her, oh, no, she doesn't hate you.
I mean, I don't know that it's a crisis of the lost stapler that you need to be calling a co-worker at home on what's apparently her day off.
Yeah.
But that's what's going on here. So they drive around, and then after 5 minutes or so, Madge calls back. Bluey seems a little disappointed, you think?
Yes, and then she goes to play with this cat named Agatha. and she seems very grumpy.
So Agatha is a stuffed, grouchy, fussy-looking cat that's one of the kids' stuffed animals. And Mom tells her she's getting on the call that she likes playing games that have a little more purpose and direction to them. And does Bluey take to that right away?
No. She just goes on and plays with Agatha. And then she offers Agatha tea. And then she says, I want almond milk.
So Mom gets off the phone and comes over. And at that point, what does Bluey suggest they do about the almond milk?
She said that Agatha said if that she didn't get almond milk in 5 minutes, she would rip up Bluey's curtains.
All right. So what does Mom and Bluey do?
They hop in the car and they rush to the store, like speeding.
All right. So Bluey is driving this car, and I believe in the show, from what I understand, that in the early episodes, Bluey is 6, and then later she's 7.
So I believe she's 7.
She's 7, and so do you think it's legal to drive when you're 7 out on the streets?
No, but to be fair, it is an imaginary car, and just let her have some fun.
I think that's right. Being 7 and kind of learning some of the rules of the road, how to drive, is a good thing. So actually, when I was a little bit older than you, had a friend who had a farm, and I remember they let us practice driving their actual cars in a big pasture, not very fast. What is one of your favorite things to do if we go to Pigeon Forge, somewhere like that?
Yeah. After going to Dollywood or something like that, we always ask to go go-karting, and it's really fun, but I'm always like the slowest one because it's a bunch of adults who actually know how to drive. And I'm one of, like, me and my cousins are all similar heights, but I'm like an inch taller than one of them, so I'm the one who doesn't ride with an adult. So I'm always super slow because it's like platforms that go spiraled up into like at least like 30 feet in the air almost.
Well, it's got lots of safety stuff and netting around and like old tires just to make sure you don't go off. But I understand going up and trying. I mean, is that a fun way to learn how to drive a car?
Yes, definitely.
So in this one, does Bluey have any hesitation whatsoever when she drives her imaginary car to the store to get that almond milk?
No, I mean, I wouldn't have any hesitation because she gets to choose what she's doing.
All right. So Bluey right away in her imaginary car puts that pedal to the metal, and they're speeding the whole way. It's raining. You know, they're doing windshield wipers. If you get in a wreck while you're speeding and cause that...
In the rain.
Yeah, in the rain. So you've got to always adjust for whatever the conditions are. As a driver in Tennessee and other places, you are responsible for knowing the rules of the road and adjusting to whatever the conditions were. So if the road is wet, it's going to take you a little longer to stop. If it's icy or snowy, you've got to take even more care. So right off the bat, Bluey's showing some negligence in her driving. What happens when they get to the store?
Well, the store is apparently closed, and from the looks of it, it's midday, so that doesn't really make any sense. But Bluey decides that she will not have her curtains ripped up, so she goes ahead and hits the gas and runs the car right into the building, and then hops out of the car, grabs the almond milk, and then she says, how should I pay? And then Mom says, drop the money on the floor. And then right as she's getting out of the building, the store manager starts chasing her.
As you would expect her to. So if you crash your car into a building and do that type of property damage, you are 100% going to be responsible for that. And something interesting from a legal standpoint is she did that on purpose.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And most of the time, your car insurance is not going to cover you for something you do on purpose. So if you ram another car or ram somebody's property like Bluey does in here,
that's on you.
It's on them. They're going to be responsible for them themselves. And since Bluey is a minor whose mom is letting her drive this imaginary car, it's probably going to end up being on Bandit and Chili to help repair for the damage. This type of thing definitely happens in the world. And
yeah, but it's probably not purposeful.
I think most of the time it's not purposeful, and if it is on purpose, you better count on covering those costs yourself because it's unlikely that your insurance is going to do it. So what happens after that? So they get the almond milk. They're trying to get back in the 5 minutes so Agatha doesn't scratch up the curtains.
They probably have about 1 minute left, and they make it with probably like 5 seconds to spare. And by the time they get back, Agatha has already scratched up the curtains.
That's right. So Are they chased by anybody on the way back?
The store manager chases them all the way, and I think eventually they run into a family of ducks, and then they swerve, and they're like on two wheels.
How do they get rid of the store guy? Do you remember?
No.
They take some of the almond milk and she squirts it on his windshield on purpose again. So she's driving recklessly the whole way, and then she tries to blind the guy behind them driving so he can't see.
I thought Mom asked, maybe we can use the almond milk to like spray it on his windshield.
She does say that, but they save enough for Agatha and just use some of it. And
I don't think Agatha deserves that milk anymore.
Definitely not after scratching up the curtain. So as far as whether there's a case here or not, there's definitely a property damage case, probably against Bluey's parents, since it's hard to hold minors accountable for things like this, especially when they're under the direction of their parent at the time they cause the damage. So curtains get scratched up anyways. At this point, I think Mom's phone rings again. She goes to help deal with the stapler emergency. And what does Bluey go to do?
She goes back to Agatha, and then they hug,
which is really nice. So it's all Bluey really wants here is just some good fun time with her mom, and her mom wanted to see some good constructive imaginary time, and they both got it and spent some really nice time together, which is what you and I are doing right now, which I appreciate.
And it's not that much just for 10 minutes to play a little game with your mom.
I agree, where they have hopefully your whole focus, because y'all grow up fast. All right, so we are now going to do our relevant evidence section of our podcast. And joining us is my youngest daughter, and Grace's sister, Vivian. So Vivian are you a big Bluey fan?
Yes.
All right, and who have you brought along with you here today?
Muffin!
And who is Muffin on the show?
A dog.
Well, is she Bluey and Bingo's cousin?
Yep.
Yep. All right. So for our relevant evidence today, we're going to talk about who our favorite characters on the show are. Who else have you brought with you here today?
All the Bluey family toys that I actually have.
Who's this guy?
Rad.
He's an uncle, right?
Yeah. Bluey!
We have a double. Is this a double
Muffin.
banding?
Yeah, Muffin is crazy.
Who's this guy?
Uncle Stripe.
All right. Who's this one?
Chili.
Who do we got here?
Bandit. And I believe all the uncles are Bandit's brothers.
All right. I saved these two for last.
Nana and Grandad.
Right. All right. So Vivian, out of all these characters, which one is your favorite one?
All of them.
That's a good answer. All right, Grace, who's your favorite character?
Probably. This is hard. Out of like the family or in all?
The entire Bluey universe, who's your favorite characters?
I think my favorite character is Lucky's dad. It's their neighbor's dad. Lucky is like in Bluey's class, and a lot of times weird stuff ends up happening to them when they play a game like Magic Xylophone, where the xylophone freezes people, and they always something bad happens to Lucky's dad in episodes. And I think it's really funny.
I've got to go probably with Bandit Healer. There's not always a lot of really positive dad representations in shows, and he is a super dad. I mean, he always seems exasperated with his children, but he'll always play with them and come up with really fun, imaginative things for them to do. And he appears to give mild protesting, but he's endlessly patient with his little daughters.
Oh yeah, he definitely gets annoyed sometimes, and he's always like, "Oh, we have to play that game. Oh, dang."
And then he does it.
And then he does it anyway, crab. And he has tons of fun.
That's right. So it's a really, really nice family. I would say probably a close second would be the grannies. Who are the grannies, Vivian?
Rita and Janet.
So Rita and Janet are Bluey and Bingo dressed up as old ladies on the show. They're in multiple episodes, and they're a lot of fun. They're kind of cranky. They play cranky old ladies.
Yeah, who drop coins and can't hear well.
Did you like the one where they sold the motorized scooter?
Yeah.
So they have a garage sale, and somebody's trying to take advantage of their friend, and the Bluey comes in as Janet, and or is it Bingo?
And then it's like Muffin. Janet is Bluey and Rita is Bingo. For the whole episode, they're trying to figure out what their what kind of granny their cousin Muffin would be for their game. And then this old lady Pug comes along, and she's super cranky, and then Muffin starts doing some negotiating. I'll pay $300 for that scooter because that's what price is on it. And then Muffin takes the price tag off and rips it. And then she says, no, 900. And then she says 500, and then it keeps going on. And then she says. And then in the end, I believe it was something like $970 plus a whole bag of lollipops.
Yeah, what I like about that one is there's some legal negotiating going on there. So that's something we do in cases a lot, is try to get our clients as much money as we can for what their injuries are. One of the things you learn when you're in law school is you never want to be in a situation where you're negotiating against yourself. So that means if you've made a demand for $500, you don't then make a demand for $450, which is less. But the lady that's buying this, the cranky lady, does that, and she ends up paying more for it because of it, because the other two, the grannies, are such good negotiators.
But she seemed really desperate for that scooter, and she seemed like she was walking quite fine.
Yeah, and the message is always try to be kind to people where you can. All right, so Vivian, in this show, in Bluey, if you dropped something or did something you didn't want, what would you say?
Oh, biscuits.
That's right. All right, well, thank you all for joining us today on the Pop Culture Courtroom, and special thanks to Grace Hardin and Vivian Hardin for being our guests. Y'all did great. See y'all next time.
Thank you. Thank you.
The Pop Culture Courtroom is a Matt Hardin Law production.
If you've been involved in a car wreck or any other type of personal injury or wrongful death case, check us out at matthardinlaw.com or give us a call at 615-200-1111.